Dr. Kemi here. Today is February 13th, 2025. A very historical event happened 39 years ago today. I was 12 years old and I was at St. Teresa's College, Ibadan. I was what they call a day student. A day student goes to school every day while the boarding students go to the dormitory after school. Many of the boarding students were children of people that lived outside Ibadan, other cities, Lagos, and all that. So the children went to the good Catholic school and stayed in the dormitory. There was a point when I became a boarding student. That was my last 2 years in my senior year. But at this time, I was a junior and I was 12. I wasn't even 13. In February 1976, chaos erupted in Nigeria. Okay, like you have already entered the school at 7 o'clock, 7:30 assembly, and you're in class at 8. Some guys, military guys, they went on Radio Nigeria in Lagos and they announced to the whole nation. Now remember, at that time, there were no radio stations in Nigeria except Radio Nigeria. So Radio Nigeria had Ibadan, Lagos. There was no Abuja. The FCT didn't even exist. So Ibadan, Lagos, I think it was Benin as well. But my uncle, the late Bankole Balogun, my uncle Bankole Balogun is married to my dad's sister, Mrs. Molara Balogun, and she's Molara Olunloyo. She is my dad's immediate sister. Okay, so my uncle, Bankole Balogun, was in charge of Radio Nigeria at that time. So on the morning of February 13, 1976, the military boys took over Radio Nigeria in Lagos, very armed to the teeth, and they announced that there's been a coup and they've taken over the government. They killed, let me say it this way because of all these censors. They kpai General Murtala Muhammed, who was the head of state of Nigeria, earlier that morning. Okay, some of you think I make up lies because you're jealous, you don't like people who have done more than you. Listen carefully. I'm a special one. Okay, when I say I'm a chosen one, I'm not talking about no rubbish church in Nigeria. I've been talking about me being a chosen one for 15 to 20 years now. I happen to have seen a lot in my life. I happen to have met a lot of people in my life. Journalism enhanced that. And I happen to be in some places at strategic times in my life. In this, my 60 years, I'm just so tired because I don't read books. So I'm finding it so hard to write my own book. But earlier that morning, General Murtala Muhammed drove out of a particular house in Ikoyi. He wasn't in Dodon Barracks. He drove out of that house and he was right in the corner. Let me tell you what that house was. That house was number 2 Bedwell Road, Ikoyi. Number 2 Bedwell Road, Ikoyi was the house I grew up in as a 16-year-old teenager. In fact, when my dad was working as science and technology director at NSTDA, what you guys call Minister of Science and Technology now, the Obasanjo military admin, that particular house was the house that was assigned to us that we were going to live in when we left Ibadan and moved to Lagos. So the Murtala Muhammed house, I always call it number 2 Bedwell Road, is still there till today. It's like burned and all that, burned down. There's a lot that happened in that house. But let me just tell you basically, that was the house we lived in 1978, 79, and 80. And when my dad, wanted to run for governor, 1982, early 83, we left Ikoyi and moved back to Ibadan. But I grew up in that particular house. I met a lot of teenagers that I know today. I went to Federal School of Arts and Sciences. Some of my classmates are big people now that you know. Agui Roku went to FSS with me. He's the pastor at Redeem in London. Ben Bruce, Guy Bruce, those are the young guys at Silverbird Productions. They were music promoters. They used to bring artists to Nigeria. You know who they are now. Ben is senator and Guy is running Silverbird along with Ben. Bukola Saraki, Baby Saraki. People we schooled in London with. Everybody is some big person now. But in those days, that's where we lived. Back to 1976, that is where General Murtala Muhammed lived. In the morning, the convoy would leave for Dodam Barracks to his office. 80 camp, everything. I think after that death, that's when the actual head of state started living inside Dodam Barracks. But anyway, so as the car came out, the black Mercedes, if you go to Ikoyi and stand in front of number 2 Bedwell Road, you will notice there's a curve by the Federal Secretariat. Now, if you look at the Federal Secretariat, the very high-rise building now, it's all black and abandoned. Now, it's like a graveyard, but that was a very busy hustle-bustle office. The Federal Secretariat, it was at that corner when they turned that those military boys were, and they opened fire and fired Murtala Muhammed. History happened on that street. So, even self, you see, when I always say I've slept in 2 president bedrooms, and people used to laugh, I've actually we slept at the room that President Obama slept during the G20 summit in Canada, in Toronto, at the Intercontinental Hotel. My son and I were in the presidential suite. That presidential suite is cut into 3. It's like a 3-bedroom when there's a president, but when there's no one, they were rented as separate rooms. The particular bedroom we slept, it was the bellman that told us we were actually sleeping on Obama's bed and everything. I'm like, wow, this is nice. KJ did a video. So at the end of the day, the room that Murtala Muhammed actually slept with his wife, that became my bedroom and my sister's bedroom. We shared it with a double bed. So at the end of the day, people, what we had was basically General Murtala Muhammed, was spied in that corner. The car is in the museum in Lagos. You can go look at it. The 80 camp died. General Dimka was arrested. I said General Dimka. Lieutenant Colonel Dimka was arrested. General Bisala, a lot of people in his own government itself that planned it, they were all arrested and they were bite, XCQ, that EX word, they were acquired and by General Danjuma. T.Y. Danjuma was the one that always bites the coup plotters within days. But there's a lot to do with his death. They've also attributed it to Gowon, who was out of the country when Murtala Muhammed took over his own government in a coup. On that very same day, February 13, 1976, only one governor was quiet on that day. It's a strategic thing. No one has been able to solve this, even me as an investigative journalist. Imagine I was 12 at the time. Later during the day, we heard that Colonel Ibrahim Taiwo was also quiet. He was the governor of Kwara State in Ilorin. They quiet him. And if you remember General Ibrahim Taiwo, if you remember General Taiwo from NSAR's panel, that army guy that came to testify and everything, Ibrahim Taiwo's son, that is his son. Yeah, General Ibrahim Taiwo's son was the army that, remember Sahara reporters was trolling him, saying like father, like son. So he too somewhere now, NSAR's army guy testifying, he too will be mourning his father today, 39 years later. He was literally a kid at that time. So, what I want to say is the relationship between Ibrahim Taiwo and Murtala Muhammed. What has not been able to be solved is why they killed those two. Nigerian media has not been able to solve it, but what I got to was the fact that when you look at General Ibrahim Taiwo and General Murtala Muhammed, they were the 2 guys that were in charge of the 2nd Infantry Division of the Nigerian Army during the Biafran War, and they were the one that orchestrated what happened in Asaba, the Asaba massacre. Yeah, they were the one that ran that show and fight so many evils on that day. So to some people it was karma. To others, they don't understand. But to me as an investigative journalist, I'm educating you. Watch me in front of 2 Bedwell Road when I visited like 5 years ago.